Alrighty, welcome to Blender Age Builders, Part 7, Collision and Export. We are on the home stretch. I'm crossing my fingers that I will get this done this time and we won't have any problems. We made it just under 40 minutes in the last video. This one might go a little longer, be aware. Also, I forgot to tell you to save in the last video. If I forget to tell you to save, well, hopefully you're smart enough to figure out, hey, I need to save my map before I close it up for the day. So make sure that you save, even if I don't save. So I'll try to put a comment in the video. I'm not going to scrap a whole video simply because I forgot to tell you to save. I shouldn't have to hold your hand through that anyway. So not trying to be mean or rude or anything, but seriously. But I should try to remember, because it is a good thing to keep you drilled in to save often and incrementally. So I've saved it. We're where we were the last time. We've got our stuff going on here. And if we were to put a player start in here and a link in, we would fall through the floor and continue falling through space and be like the first missed game. And that's why collision is important, because that is the only way so that the game can say, okay, this surface is solid, this surface isn't. This is where the player can go. The player can't go here. You know, this is where an object that a player can interact with and move, or a lever can be touched or whatever, otherwise your hand would go through it. It'd be like going around in waking reality like Ghost Dad, that old movie with Bill Cosby. You know, when a car drives through him. You need to have collision. In Complete Chronicles through PyPRP, we have two main types of collisions that I know of. One is called a box collision box, and the other one is called a per surface kind of, or face collision. I'm calling it face collision. So I got some descriptors here. You can apply face collision. It's per selected face. We go to the logic panel. I'll go to that in a minute. And we go to bound. We choose triangle mesh from the drop down box. Collision boxes is about the same way, except to make a box around our mesh. We turn the box into a wireframe. We add a couple of properties to it. We give it the same thing for collision bounds, and then we add the doesn't say here exactly how to do it, but it's basically the same thing. You use the same kind of triangle collision, but you use it in a box, and you give it the name of collider. Now we're going to add collision boxes to our obelisk and our planters. We're going to add face collision for now to the floors, stairs, and walls. We might decide to go to box collision later on the walls. For now, we're going to do a little bit of like how they did, and as far as I know how they did in Mist Online Euro Live, we're just going to add collision where the player is going to be. We know the player is going to be. We won't add collision to stuff that the player won't be colliding with. But I have a bit of a nitpick there. I consider that to be kind of sloppy. If I come in here, and I understand why developers do it, because, you know, it saves processing power, and, you know, you don't need all that extra stuff. But if I was on the, what is it, the Ubisoft team or Cyan or whoever did the collision originally in Mist Online Euro Live, as far as I know, when I went flying around and went through some of the walls and stuff, the collision I would almost bet would only be applied to this face here, because the player could hit it and interact with it. These two faces here, the top of this wall and the front of this, and maybe sometimes not even the top of this wall. Not the top of these, but these faces here. So you'd only have these front faces and this, maybe this top face and this face, and that's all you would have collision on for the wall. There would be no collision on the top or on the back side here or over here. Now, maybe that was important, you know, a decade ago or whenever it was that Complete Chronicles came out, but our processors are a little more powerful now, and I don't know that how much you're going to actually save by removing that. It's just more calculations that the processor has to do, or the video card, or however it works. That's all we're going to do. We're going to be cheap like that, too. We're just going to do these faces that we know the player can get a hold of. But I consider it sloppy. I think that this whole entire wall should be solid on all sides. You know, even though the player will probably never get out there and never be able to experience this, it's just a nitpicky kind of a thing for me. I don't know why. I can't explain. I can't justify my viewpoint. There's no logic behind it. It's just a bias, I guess, or a preference. So that's what we're going to do here. We're just going to do per face on all of this, and then we're going to do on these planters, we're going to do our box collision type. And what am I doing here? What does this say? Remove face collision from the walls. Okay, I don't know that we're going to be doing this homework in my previous homework assignments. I don't know what all I said even anymore, but I think I discussed partly in the last video. It's not going to be worth it to do the sides of these planters. And I went through a big long process, and out of the last video I cut part of the end out. You probably noticed that part of the end was cut because I was going through trying to split these faces and work here. And to make a long story short, we'd have to cut it in half all the way along. And if we were to go into edge mode, tab and then control tab, and try to do a knife cut just on the two that we want, and I press K and loop cut, not knife cut but loop cut, you see I get this pattern here. Because all the vertices have to match for the faces. You can't have a face with two vertices on one side in the middle and two vertices in the corner, and then on the other side just two vertices in the corner. You have to go all the way across. So it's not worth either one of those homework assignments other than the challenge of just playing around learning the tools. For the processes of building our age, we don't want to spend the time worrying about that. So we won't be doing anything with those two homework assignments, either the side of the planters or matching up the low wall with the high wall. For now, we're just leaving that alone. And this other homework assignment here, I don't know that we'll do it either. We'll see. Okay, so we'll just start with the collision right now. We'll begin with face collision. So I believe we need to go into face mode. Will be our best bet. Mine might already be set. You could be lazy and select all, and that would also do face collision on the planters, but I want to go over how to do it all. So I just want you to click on these faces here and just shift and click and just grab what you can in the view. And this is one way we can do it. There is another way. Actually, maybe I should just do it the other way. Excuse me for a second. I'm changing my mind. Go ahead and press B and box select and just drag it over. And B and box select and go over. And, oh, excuse me again. I didn't go far enough. We want the stairs too. And just do that till you have this pattern. This would be faster. Let's just do it this way. Okay, so now what we have to do is just grab these faces here to add to our selection. So let's shift click. Grab everything you can see in your view. Rotate, grab anything you can see. We just want these inside faces that the player will hit. We don't need the outside faces, but we do need the inside ones. Now mine might already be set, but we'll go through the process. So I'm checking. Okay, now I've also selected, unfortunately, these outside portions of the walls, which we don't need. So I'm shift clicking those because we don't need them. We're going to do this cheap and dirty. So these are all going to be face select. Otherwise we'd have to make a big huge complicated mesh to go over each of the corners. It would take too long, and I'm not willing to do that, and you're probably not either. Grab these corners. We need them as well. These triangles shouldn't be a problem. Most of the things when you go into a game engine are cut up into triangles. So, and there is a modifier, and I don't know anything at all about how to do it, but there's a modifier for making everything into triangles for Blender, and it's a good idea to do that, especially with older games, but I don't know how right now. I'm not going to go into it. So I've got all my faces selected. I'm going to go here to this first one, F4 I think it is, and it's Logic Panel, and yeah, I already have it there. So you'll see something like this. Click on the bounds box, click in this, and if it doesn't say triangle mesh already, select triangle mesh, and then leave that alone, and that's all you do. Wow, what the... Got my mouse too low or something. Okay, so once you've done that, I'll go through the save process. So I'm going to save this as 30. And you can call yours whatever you want, save it whatever you want. If you want to add collision to the other surfaces, you can. I'm not going to stop you, obviously, but that's all I'm doing here. So our next thing are these planter boxes. That'll be very simple for us. So we're going to press numpad 7. We're going to press A to get out of here, tab. We're going to press Z so we can see everything. And I'm going to press Shift C to make sure we're on the grid and in the center. And we still got the pivot where we had it before, so it'll pivot around the 3D cursor. If you don't have that, then select that over here, 3D cursor. A, add, mesh, cube. We know these are going to be something along the lines of 10 by 10, so in, and shift click, and 10. And then we're going to grab it and put it over there. And numpad 1. I'm excited to get us going to an export. I've been working towards this very hard. Pressing tab, control tab, vertices, in to dismiss this, A, B to box select. I'll go into this more later to answer questions, but to deselect, all you gotta do is press B and then middle mouse and drag. Pressing A twice, and then again to deselect everything, B, because I want all the top vertices, G, and yank it on up there. And A again, Shift S, selection of grid, set numpad 7, numpad 1, verifying my size, and we're good. And tab, and let's just put the properties on this one, so when we duplicate it, it should duplicate all the properties and save us some effort. So this is a little trickier, and I've got to try to refresh my memory on all the things that we have to do. So we have to go over here, I think, to the editing panel. I think that's where I have to go. Or is it the object panel? I have the steps listed here, I believe. So logic panel, bounds. Yeah, we do the collision bounds. We're going to add a property. Okay, we'll get there in a minute. So we want this to be a wireframe. Just click it both ways, because we don't want it to display anywhere. Okay, and we've got to add a property to it. First we'll go to bounds, and now I've done triangle mesh. I've never tried box. I'm going to go ahead and use box because it's a simpler one. We're going to add a property, and in this drop down box here, this is to delete the property, and this here is a kind of object. It's like a scripting or something. So we want a type of a string. And then here in the name we want to type in collider. Is that correct? I think I got that backwards. Excuse me a second. Type collider. Excuse me. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so here we want a type of collider. Not letting me type. Shift click to do it. Enter. So we should have string of a type of collider. And I can't see if I spelled it correctly, but it should be C-O-L-L-I-D-E-R. If we did it wrong, it'll complain because it'll ask, or it won't ask, but it'll demand that we have some kind of texture applied to the object PyPRP won't export it. And that applies to our whole mesh if we don't have a texture applied to it. Not a texture, but a material. You put textures in materials in Blender. A material can be one texture or multiple textures. We got to have some kind of material applied to export an object. So we have our cube here. We want to rename this. So, how about plant col1? Sounds good to me. Pressing enter. Not really important. I think that's all we have to do unless I forgot something. I'll double check my instructions. Shift D, R, Control. You know the routine here. Now in this case, you can go over here to our first plant col and shift click in this outliner view, and now we've got both of them. So Shift D and R and Control. Now we might want to rename these, so I would probably call this one, instead of 001, I'd probably call it 2, and I'd probably call this one 3. It doesn't really matter, but it's good to give everything a unique name. So now I've got plant collision. I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. If I check the properties, they should all be the same. So they're all wireframe. They're not going to render or show up in our final thing. None of them should have should have any kind of material, not collision, but material. Man, having some stomach issues. We don't have anything going on here or here. That's render. And then here we have bounds box, and we'll change that to triangle mesh if we need to, but box should work. Now the problem with it being box is you wouldn't be able to experience this bevel on top, but you're not going to notice whether or not you can climb on that bevel, so it don't matter. And I think we're good. So now we'll save it again. I'm just going to save over my previous. Okay, now we need to take care of the obelisk. That'll be easy. It's the same thing. We want to do another collision box. Now, in my case, because I made it a little more difficult on myself, I'm pressing A to deselect all, spacebar to add a cube. I've got to try to calculate my size. So it's probably something like 2010 or something, and then I got to rotate it into place. So I'm pressing N. Now in your case it may not be rotated, and that's okay. However you did it's fine. Okay, that looks a little too big. Maybe 10? Looks too big for that. Okay. Let's go ahead and press R and Control. Okay. Oh, that's kind of cool. I can work on that a little bit there. Okay, how about 8? Perfect. Mine is 10 by 8, and I can press R and rotate it back around. And I can press Shift S and selection of grid. And now I can go in here, and numpad 1, we know we need it moved down, so I'm pressing grab and moving it down. And then tab and A and B and select, and we're going to move it way up there, so grab and Control and Shift S, numpad 7, we're good. Tab R, Control, and the same process we went through before. See, now my obelisk is now contained in this box. Bounds, box, add property, string of type, collider. Shift click if you want to rapidly get into that box. I keep forgetting to do that, so I'll keep saying it so you can remember. Going over here and changing its name to OBE col or something. Alright, so now I have obelisk collision. You might have recognized this from one of my other videos. I don't remember how far I got on showing you what I had before. Maybe not, because the last video I did was... yeah, you probably didn't see this before, because I think that was the last take. So, not the last video. Alright, now when we go in here, our player should be able to run around. We're going to do one last thing, and I got to cover one more thing before we get to the export. Try to make this as fast as I can, but I'm not going to worry about if it goes over. I'm pressing Z. You might want to have a different color than gray. I'm not going to show you how to do a texture yet. Oh, and I did make one mistake, but that's okay. It's quick and easy to fix. Go over here to this one and click on wire and wire. And now it'll be a wire, so it won't hide your geometry too much. I wonder why it's doing that kind of flickering down there at the base. Oh, because it's right on the edge. Alright, anyway, if you want to change the color here, I'm going to show you how to do that. So first we'll go to our obelisk. I'm going to hide our collision step to make it easier. So I'm going to hide this one and all of the plant collision, just so we don't have that extra data in my way. So if we go here to this shading, F5, we can see that we have a material here. You may not see a material there. What you might see, depending on how everything went together, you don't do any of this that I'm doing, you might see this. And if you see this, just click on Add New, and now you have a material. And all we're going to change here is the color. You can use any color you like. I'm not going to tell you how to do anything else. I just have gray on mine, so I want this to be a really light color. These are the same thing. Shift click, maybe 0.8 by 0.8. I'm not doing anything other than gray. I know it's boring, but alright, so that's my color, and it should show up over here now as 0.8 gray. And I want it a little brighter, so I'm going to change it. Shift click. I think this is the same color boxes. So you don't have to click on color to do it either. Yeah, okay. So I wanted that a little bit wider, and it is. I kind of like that, but I still want to go a little brighter. You can adjust this as you like. I don't want it white for me, so that's as much as I'm going to go. And then you can change your material over here. So same process. If you don't see this already, add the material. Once you've added it, you can go to the color channel over here in this box and you can change it. And so I have mine set there. Now I think that we can change it per face as well. So if I wanted, for whatever reason, to have a lighter color for the floor, I could probably do that. I'm not 100% sure. Let's try that one, and no, it just does the whole thing. So as far as I know, you can't do anything outside of that, so that's okay. Tab, and I'm going to put the color back to what I had, 0.7. I think this time I'm going to just go 0.7. I didn't like it as dark as it was. So once we have a material applied, and if you've kept the object separate, make sure you apply it to your planter boxes and to your steps. But you got to have a material on every one of your objects. So right now all I have is a middle area and an obelisk. That's all I need to add my material to, but if you have more, make sure you've added a material to all of them. You have to have a material. And do not add something over here yet, because this may not work for you. This is adding a texture to your material. You're welcome to experiment with that after this after following through with this video, because I want you to get to a successful import-export. But I am still learning how to deal with textures. So I don't know when or if I will do a video on that. I'm just going to take you through just using simple colored material for now. That'll get you to have an age. You'll have competence with modeling in Blender, and I'm going to give you a link to a video tutorial series. I'll take you a little further if you want to go that way, until and unless I do something myself. So we're all set here, and all we need now is a player start. We have nowhere for the avatar, as they call it in Uru, in Myst, to come in. So actually, I think it's Uru and Myst Online Uru Live that require an avatar. Now, pressing numpad 7 and not X, Z. Okay, so I need to add a player start, so I'm going to go here to add PyPRP. Remember, the menu will pop up under the cursor. We want to add, am I in the wrong area? No, I'm right. Spawn point. Now, where is the spawn point at? You see it, that we added it, and we see a LinkedIn point default, but where is it? Okay, well, now we've got to cover something called layers. If we press M, we get this box, and we can move stuff to different layers. And I'm not going to move it because I don't know how to move it back right now. But that's what this little box is, and it correlates to this box here. When you see a little dot in there, that's where something else is located. If we click on that, we can now see our LinkedIn point default is right here. It probably correlates to the 3D cursor. It's probably where it adds. Yeah, it looks like it adds it to the 3D cursor. So we can control where it's located by that. We want to make sure that this is going to be where we want it to be. I don't know how we control the rotation, but to do that, shift click onto the first box, and now you should have both boxes grayed. So to show that again, I'm going to just click over here. So you got this box initially. You see that it's gray. Shift click on the second box, and now we've selected both, and now we have access to this. So we can click on that, and now we can move this. And what I want to do is I want to move it. I'm going to grab it. I think the most impactful place to start would be, and I think we will try to figure out where we might spawn in at too. I'm going to press G and move it over here. I think that's where we want it. Yeah, because it's showing here we've got, let me see, if I do a different, okay, I'm not sure about that. Pressing numpad 1, I'll play with it here in a minute. I want to get this above the floor just a little bit. I don't want any problems with the player coming in. Oh, and it's showing a Z-axis, and it's showing an arrow here, which must be its face. Okay, so that's what that line's for. So the player will link in facing this way, if I'm interpreting this correctly. I think. So I'm going to press R and Control. I'm not. Okay. Well, we'll just leave it the way it is, because it looks like it's going to, oh, never mind. I know why. Median point. Oh yeah, and that correlates to its axis. Okay, R and Control, and now I can change it if I wish to. So I can have the X-axis. Because when I had it, I have to think a second. And I had it in my build, I think I had it up here, and it was facing this way, which was opposite of the Y. I'm assuming that he's going to be facing this way towards the wall. So I want to put Y back here. So R and Control. And I'll show that again, that we need to change this pivot to do that to median here. Alright, so that's what we're going to do, and if we're facing the wall, then I messed up, and that's okay. We're just learning and all of this, so I'm going to call that good. So our player start is now in place. We are ready to export this age. We have to cross our fingers that everything is going to work. We're going to get an error if it doesn't work, if there's something messed up. If I did my job and didn't miss something, we'll be okay. Alright, so pressing A to deselect everything, and I'm unhiding everything just to make sure we don't need it visible. Saving again. File, Export, PyPRP. A menu will pop up under the cursor. We want General Release Age for now. We're going to call it something, and I'm going to have you go ahead and call it obelisk, which you can call it something else if you'd like. So obelisk.age, export final age. Now, is it? Oh, okay, it's working. It might take a second to process. Okay, so I think it went through. I don't see any sign of errors. This should look good here. So everything here looks good. So I think we're okay, and we'll get to in here in just a second. There's one more thing I need to tell you before we get going. It's a note that I have over here about the prefix. And I've run into this problem now. I said that it didn't really matter offline for your sequence prefix, but it does. For some reason, Your Complete Chronicles is remembering my ages that I've processed in Drizzle and I've played. So I've had to change this a lot. So remember when we first started, we had this prefix number here. I've changed this now to, well, I think it's 128.71, but it used to be 128.64. I've had to keep incrementing this. What's going to happen if you have exported this a couple of times and you've used the same prefix? You're going to come in, you're going to be like nothing's changed because your level is going to look exactly the same, even if you made a major alteration, you know, and you're going to wonder what's going on. And it's because for some reason, even though your age is a different name and everything else, but has the same sequence number as something done previously, and Your Complete Chronicles has for whatever reason remembered it, then that's what you're going to load. It's going to load by prefix number, not by age name. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. So keep that in mind. If you see that kind of a thing happening, and you don't know what in the world's going on, you've loaded it up and you've made changes, and all of a sudden there's no changes there, then it's probably your sequence number has to be incremented by 1. So increment sequence number by 1. You can export it with the same name, and it should be okay. If you have any questions about that, please post in the video. But I think I've covered it and explained it fairly well now. And you know about how to change that. I showed you that when we first started. Okay, so that concludes this video tutorial. Join me in the next part where we will set up Drizzle and get this age ready for playing.